the standard orchestra, and it lends itself to the Diablo universe. Moving on into the recording phase, obviously you get the best musicians you can. We got fantastic orchestra playing the stuff. The choir, both choirs are amazing. All that blended together in specific ways, and for me, I had to reach a little bit and stretch to try to do it in more unusual ways than I would do it for Warcraft, for example. I think in the mixing and post-production or production phase is where I would do a lot of the magic that didn't happen in the writing phase by taking and manipulating live recordings, adding. I even got in there and used some guitar and other instruments to play some weird effects and things to just add to that texture. I took live recordings, maybe slowed them down to half speed or reversed them and slowed them down, blended them with other parts, and also tried to keep the whole thing more modular. A linear approach to music is one approach, and we would use that for a cinematic, for example. For the game, we wanted to be able to do more variation. So we have a layering system, and we have the ability to take the same content and implement it in any number of different ways and add a lot of variation that way. So, and I wanted to echo the sentiment of, thanking you all for coming out here. It's a great honor to be here and talk to our fans. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the show, and I'll hand you back to Russell now. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Well, you mentioned implementation. Chris mentioned implementation. There's this whole step of creating the sounds and then getting them into the game and triggering them and things like that. And for a composer, such as my colleague Derek Duke over here, do you find yourself composing for the machine, or do you find yourself focused on the gameplay, the story? I mean, what motivates you to create this music?
Well, it's always the gameplay, and the gameplay and the story are very, very much intertwined. Just to carry on what Glenn was talking about, one of the interesting aspects of Diablo is there's basically nothing that gets in music-wise that hasn't been processed in some way or another and gotten dirty or stinky, as Joseph likes to put it. So whether we're granularizing and stretching things and processing them, distorting them, pushing the orchestra so far back that you only hear the echo or the reverberation of it, or taking Joseph playing a trombone and slowing that down, or bowing a kalimba, or just collecting all sorts of waterphone sounds and transferring those and translating those into musical textures and musical design that, sort of, if you hear an instrument that there's something a little bit off and something different. It's not quite the same as you would encounter it in a normal world, because Diablo, while you've got a lot of things that we have in real life, like trees and grass, and like the whole universe, there's it's a different place. So by paying attention to the treatment of all the instruments that make up the music, that sort of, I think that really helps embed you into the world and is going to make your experience and the time that you live in the Diablo universe all the more special.
The music again in thank you, Derek. The music again in Diablo 1, 2, and 2 expansion was so iconic and special. So I want you all to know that we paid great homage to that, especially in Act 1, because you start just outside New Tristram, and you're going to hear, you've probably heard some of it in the beta. I wish I had a lot of beta keys to throw out at you here. We studied what had come before. We also had about 90 minutes of recordings of Matt Ullman playing guitar and riffing on the original Diablo guitars and calling out what different things were in his mind, you know, for different sections. And so that's one of the things that I got to do in addition to the cinematic music, was to take that guitar work plus some stuff that Lawrence had done and kind of make this pastiche, this tapestry to take you through New Tristram. So now I want to talk a little bit about Lawrence. So Lawrence, I did call Paul McCartney and told him to leave you alone so that we could have full-time use of you. From Wings to Diablo 3, we have Lawrence Juber. Welcome, Lawrence.
Thank you. Thanks. You know, I saw myself as kind of the bridge from Matt's guitaristic stuff into the new version of it. And what was important for me was to maintain the continuity of that 12-string guitar-driven texture. And the voice of the 12-string is just so important. So, because I use a lot of altered tunings on my guitar work, what I did was, in places I would, instead of playing it in a regular standard tuning, I would retune the guitar. Let's say here I got C, G, D, G, A, D, which gives me a very dark, kind of orchestrated texture to it. And then I would further layer and create texture by using other double-strung plucked instruments like mandolin, octave mandolin, Renaissance lute, also the hammer dulcimer, which is a very spooky and characteristic sound, and just try and build a lot of texture and make it, as much as I could, unpredictable, so that repetition wouldn't become kind of boring, but would keep like unearthing new things through the unearthing new things through the different layers. So, and I also took, I mean, we have the original kind of those chords, but there's also melodic elements like there's that element, so bringing that into the texture. And just going in odd harmonic places and just kind of creating this ambience. It was really, it was just a pleasure to get so immersed into something.
Super awesome.
Thank you.
Lawrence Juber, everyone. So you got to get the collector's edition. You got to get the soundtrack. And you saw on the video there that big giant stage. Yes, we played the pipe organ. It's the heavens did tremble. It's good stuff. I want to thank this incredible panel, this best sound department on the planet in the industry. Do you guys have any thoughts you want to add before we open it up to Q&A? Anyone? Andrea? Joseph?
Russell, I had one thing I wanted to say, and that is, I'm in awe of the team I work with, but even when I approach voiceover, hearing all of them talk about their sound assets and the sound design and the music, even when I do voiceover, I think about how are my voices going to fit into this landscape? What's the tone of, I have D3 music and samples and so forth on my iPod that I play in the car because I really am cognizant of the sound sphere of the game. So I think all of our units, everything that we do really comes together beautifully because we all kind of work in harmony to create that kind of gestalt and vibe and energy that we're after.
We also took the music as we completed various sections over the last few years since the announcement in Paris and fed that music to the team so that the actual development team would get all geeked up on it too. So that was a lot of fun. One last thing I want to mention that I think is a really proud moment for music in video games is that when we announced Diablo 3 at the Worldwide Invitational in Paris, we didn't do it with video or a speech or anything. Mike Morheim just came up on stage and said, we'd like to present Blizzard's newest game. And the lights went down to black and then they came up red with Lawrence was on the stage and he played those opening chords. That was the first clue anyone had was the music, and it was unmistakable. Everyone knew exactly what game it was, and there was something like 11, 12,000 people in that room, and they just blew the roof off of it. So for a game to be able to be identified by a chord of music is really, really cool.
That was a scary moment for me.
Well, I think we have just the perfect time here to take some questions. So are we set up for that?
Yes, indeed we are.
Okay, fire away.
Step right up. Hello. I'd first of all like to say that the orchestral theme for Diablo 3 has been my ringtone on my phone since it first came out. So thank you for that. And also, I'm in the beta, so I've been able to hear the sound and hear the music and hear the wonderful voice acting. And I really appreciate the fact that all the lore is audible. I don't have to stop gameplay to read the text or to hear what quest I'm on next. It's so nice to have everything just from an audio standpoint. It makes having really good headphones an awesome part of the game. So
That's
thank
excellent.
you guys very much for the effort and the you know, just the
Thank you.
beautiful
Great
quality
comment.
of work you all put into it. So thank you guys. I'm looking
You are
forward to
welcome.
the finished
Thank
game
you.
like
Thank
no
you.
business.
We worked pretty hard, actually, working with the designers to actually get the lore to be something that just wasn't getting in the way of the game. If you wanted to stop and listen to it, you could. If you wanted to keep killing stuff, which most people do, you can. And you can still come back to it later if you need to. So thanks for noticing.
I just got a job with making sounds and music for a game, and one of the things that had come up in the development...
Congratulations.
What? Thanks.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm really happy about it. But one of the things that came up in the development was open source sounds, and I know that World of Warcraft has a lot of these open source familiar sounds. When is it appropriate to use them? When is it not appropriate to use them? And does it ever get to a point where you're taking these sounds and changing them?
Well, the reality of it is that we create as much material as we can. We really like everything to be completely original, but there always isn't time to make everything from scratch. But if we do use something, we always tweak it beyond recognition. You'll never hear a stock sound just thrown in the game, and it's been layered with 10 billion other things, and it's just part of the mix. So you'll never hear something right off a disc. Never. I mean, that's a point of pride. I couldn't do it.
My rule of thumb for that is if you do use anything like that, take it and mangle it and just reuse it. Make it something different than what it was originally.
On a technical level, I've noticed that you're using a combination of a SND file, OGG, and a couple other formats within the game. How do these different formats relate to each other within the game environment in terms of playback?
I believe this man has violated his terms of use.
Yeah, are we allowed to answer that question? Well, basically, we use OGG files because we actually like the way they sound on music better than any other type of compression. They are more expensive in the decompression phase, so we don't use that for everything because it's just too hard on the engine. So we just basically use that for the music, and I think the ambience as well. It just sounds better. We like the sound better on music. Everything else, the sound effects are typically 80 BPM, so.
There are elements